Approximately 40 to 80% of autistic people actually identify as being LGBTQ+. If you're autistic, I'm sure that this figure doesn't surprise you. It certainly didn't surprise me. Today, I want to kind of get into the correlation between sexuality, being LGBTQ+, and also being neurodivergent. In particular, what I'm going to be talking about is autism because I myself am autistic. Hey guys, it's Elena and welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you are new here. For those of you who don't know me, I was diagnosed with autism at age 25, and now I am kind of documenting and sharing my experiences of having lived a quarter of a decade, having gone undiagnosed. Going undiagnosed with something like autism, I believe, can cause many different hindrances for people in their lives. And what I have recently realized is that my misdiagnoses may have actually led to me not understanding my sexuality. So I have only been with men my entire life. In fact, I've even featured some of these boyfriends in the past on my YouTube channels. But there has always been a big question mark if this was actually me. I remember being around 15 years old and having just gone to see Breaking Dawn Part 1, the good old Twilight series. And while my friends were asking questions like, are they Team Edward or Jacob, I actually came away from that first movie having had a very serious conversation with one of my friends, basically saying that I'm not sure if that life, that marriage, kids look that they portrayed in that movie was something that I wanted for myself, and I couldn't understand why at that point.
Why are you gay?
It was within this year that I spoke to my mum and I asked her how did she know that she was attracted to men. It was quite a big question mark as to whether I was gay or not. It wasn't that I was attracted to the females that I was around, but I was also not attracted to the males. So it kind of led me to the point of, am I asexual? And then I kind of fell into my first relationship. And this first relationship was with somebody that I found very, very attractive, a man. I did all the kind of quote unquote normal things that you do in your first relationship, and I just kind of went from there. There was never a feeling of like, this is wrong, but it was just this feeling that I now describe as cringe. And this feeling of cringe has been present in every single one of my relationships with men. If you guys want some tea on me, I was not the best girlfriend in relationships. I guess the best way to describe it is I was one to self-sabotage things. I found it to be very comfortable when I was chasing somebody, but when someone really cared about me and loved me, I found that to be an incredibly uncomfortable place. And so this kind of got me to be learning about attachment styles and love languages, and I kind of invested my time, my focus into these things, believing that my issues were a case of avoidant attachment. Having done a whole lot of therapy in my life, and in particular the first 6 months of this year, I learned that it wasn't actually avoidant attachment that was my issue. I was very, very anxious, but I couldn't understand this feeling inside of me that, you know, when someone came close to me, a man came close to me emotionally, when he liked me, when he wanted me, I couldn't control this feeling of disgust. And I've never really said that word out loud because it sounds mean. If I felt like that, then why was I continuing to see these guys? I just knew that, particularly in my last relationship, like, it was a really, really good person that I should want. I really, really wanted a future with him, but I couldn't make the necessary changes in order to keep him around, and I hated myself for it. I'm not sure if this is like going to be a bit too TMI, but in the spirit of being honest and sharing my truth, it felt like an important thing to include. When it came to physical intimacy, it was never something that I was physically present with. It was still an act like everything else in my life. I masked my way through life, and so it made sense that, yeah, when it came to intimate moments, it was still a mask because I didn't know how to actually let the guard down. I truly put it down to just me having no idea on how to let a mask down. It never well, I shouldn't say never. It mostly didn't occur to me that it could be something to do with my sexuality. So now, having moved to a brand new country, this is the kind of growth that I was ultimately looking for, is to be able to understand myself in ways that I wasn't going to be able to understand in my own country, surrounded by people that make me feel incredibly safe, but maybe don't push me to grow in ways that I need to. I have been in this brand new country of Canada for 3 months, and I have found such a deeper level of understanding of myself, as I came out in my last video saying I am queer. And I realize that now there is a part of me that even questions beyond that point. Like, was I always queer? Maybe was I even always gay? But because I went undiagnosed for so many years of my life, there was always this giant question mark about who I was as a person. And so there was kind of little room to ask who I was in romantic relationships. What was my actual sexuality? I now have the space to find that out, and I realize that this is perhaps something that is extremely common. While I don't have a lot of knowledge around this right now, I wanted to talk about the things that I do know about the correlation between being LGBTQ+ and being autistic or neurodivergent. So something that I found that was hugely interesting: individuals with gender and sexual identities outside of the cis hetero binary were also 3 to 6 times more likely to have a diagnosis of autism. There are so many studies, if you go in and look for the information, that show just how common it is for autistic individuals to be queer. I would really like to know why that is. I don't just kind of accept a fact, I need to understand the premise behind it. A really, really interesting perspective when I was doing this research actually came from this individual called Jude Doyle. So their experience was quite different, in fact quite opposite to mine, but I still thought it was an important distinction to make. They wrote of their reaction to being suggested by their therapist that they might be autistic. It was the strangest feeling. I'd spent years obsessed with my sexuality or my gender, convinced that naming my queerness would explain everything different about me, and here at the end of the road was one more obvious thing I'd been ignoring. It was autism. They believed the reason that they didn't fit in with the world was because they were queer. They never considered that it was autism. For me, I initially got the diagnosis of autism, believed that was my reason for not being able to kind of connect emotionally, romantically with men. Meanwhile, I was ignoring the bigger thing at play, which was maybe I was never meant to be into men.
Why are you gay?
I try and include different perspectives within these videos, not just to show mine, but to show that with the topics that I'm talking about, there are different perspectives and different things that people are going through, and I'm sure that there are many of you that do relate to this. Whether the autism diagnosis came first and then your sexuality realization, or the sexual realization came first and then subsequently the autism diagnosis. You know, there's no one or right way to come to understand yourself, but I think with autistic people, with neurodivergent people, we are always wanting to know more. That's why so many of us really want to know about human behavior. It's why a lot of us study psychology, like myself. From what I've seen online, from what I've kind of researched, there isn't a massive amount of understanding as to why there is this correlation between varied sexual preferences and being neurodivergent. But something that I wrote down, my theory on it is that we need to understand our emotions as autistic people. We need to find a reason, not just do something because the world thinks that we should. There needs to be a why. The world thinks I should have a stronger connection with a man just because I was born a woman, but why do I feel safer, more seen with a woman? Fuck that. We are very, very intentional people, and there needs to be a why behind why we do something. And just because we're told that we need to be living life a certain way doesn't cut it for us, particularly if it doesn't feel right. I mean, if it does feel right, sure, we'll go ahead with it. But we are curious souls, and this is just a theory that I've kind of been thinking about dwelling on. As I said, I always try to include different perspectives, and Reddit, I think, gives the biggest view of different people's perspectives, and really incredibly intelligent people are able to convey their thoughts in ways that even I am unable to do. So these are some other people's theories that I have taken from Reddit. If you're not aware or are unable to understand social norms, you're more likely to go against them. If someone already feels different or like an outsider due to their neurodivergence, it can be easier to accept other types of difference, like being queer. Struggling to understand social norms regarding gender and attraction also makes it easier to question why they exist in the first place. This next one is incredibly fascinating to my mind. Being objecto, which is loving or having a close connection to objects, is also very closely related to being neurodivergent due to how we process our feelings and emotions. It's easier for us to attach to objects. While I've never developed a romantic connection to objects, I do understand placing this kind of human persona on an object and feeling like they're sad or they're happy. And the last theory is, once you've lived a life at the bottom of the social totem pole, being openly queer is the least of our worries. And I love that. I think that there is something so beautiful about being neurodivergent, being so surely yourself that you can't do anything else but be yourself because it feels so innately wrong. So in all of this research and what I'm trying to convey in this video is neurodivergent people are unable to fake it. Even if they go 10 years of dating men like myself, I think the truth ultimately finds us at some point in our lives, whether we're 28 like me or freaking 98. I think ultimately we're always on the pursuit for knowledge and understanding and trying to find a place of why things feel good and why things feel bad. Hopefully this has been an interesting conversation, but above all else, I hope it really makes you appreciate your brain. Your brain is unable to live anything but its own truth, and that's really a beautiful thing to me. So I'm gonna leave it there, you guys. Thank you so much for listening to my words today, and I'll talk to you very soon. Bye.